It's a bit of an insane thought, but it's time to put this in this. Let's go. Back in 2017, I began a full restoration of my 96 Bayliner by tearing it apart all the way down to the hull. From there, I began the rebuilding process, which included learning to fiberglass, rebuilding an engine and outdrive, learning to fair and paint, and even upholstery. Now, I've bought a 28-foot cabin cruiser, and I'm starting all over. Welcome, my name's Jared. Now get ready, because it's going to be a ship show. Well, I got the battery cables installed with the Class T fuse. I think it's time to fire this battery up and hope nothing catches on fire. But before I do that, I'm going to go around one more time. I've already done this like twice, maybe 3 times, just double checking everything, making sure there's no wires hanging loose that are going to short out and things like that. And try and turn off every switch that I can. I want to be able to monitor kind of everything one at a time. So yeah, let's go do that real quick. All right, well, I've double, triple checked everything. So everything I can find that can be turned off is off. So now the question is, where do I want to do it? Do I want to turn it on remotely in the cockpit so I can see everything back in the electrical panel back there? Or do I want to turn it on at the battery itself in the engine compartment so I can see things back there? Because both options exist and equal concern in both places, so I'm thinking the engine compartment. I lied. We're doing it here because the gauge for the battery is back here, and that is one of the first things I want to look at to make sure everything's working correctly. Here goes nothing. Oh my god. Whoop, things are making noises. For some reason the bilge pumps are running. Alright, so I did something goofy with the bilge pump wiring. I'm going to have to get that straightened out, but I pulled the fuse on that for now, so I don't smell smoke back here, which is always a good sign. So let's head back to the aft cabin, take a look at the electrical panel, see what's going on back there. Shouldn't be much because there's all kinds of battery switches that should be off right now, but let's go look. Okay, so we are finally back in the aft cabin here, looking at the electrical panel. So, the good news is nothing smells bad, first of all. No smoke or anything. I don't know if this will show up on the camera or not, but my battery gauge here that comes with the Epoch battery, Epoch battery, whatever it's called, is powered up, so that's a good sign. But nothing in here is otherwise. So the first thing I want to do is I'm actually going to turn on this main battery disconnect switch here, which basically is going to take the input from the house battery on the other side of this bulkhead and actually supply power to the Lynx distributor, which then kind of branches down the system essentially. Now, there's 2 exceptions to that. If you remember, these 2 small ETC fuses here are, one of these is powering the always-on fuse block, which is back in the engine compartment for bilge pumps, stereo memory, mercathode, things like that. And this other one actually just goes to the battery gauge, battery status gauge on the breaker panel. So those 2 are actually technically powered right now, which makes sense because we had that bilge pump issue. But anyway, everything else downstream is off at this point. So what I'm going to do is turn this main battery disconnect on, which will supply power to the Victron Lynx distributor, which is really only supplying power to one thing at this point, because the first thing you'll see here is the Orion XS, and I actually have that disconnected at this breaker right now because I don't want to power up the Orion battery charger because I don't have a start battery right now or an engine to actually charge anything. So we will test that and deploy that later once we have the start battery in. The next thing in the system is these big old wires going to the inverter, and I'm going to leave that disconnected for now because that's going to be one of the last things I want to set up because there's a lot of setup involved with that. Finally, this last set of wires coming out is going to this fuse block, which is going to break off to the Helm fuse panel, which is obviously up underneath the Helm. The DC panel up there in the cabin, which obviously is the DC panel. And then this last one is the amplifier. I don't have a manual disconnect for that, and I'm not really that worried about it. So I'm just going to leave that, and that's going to get power. So it is what it is. Now, there is actually a couple other wires that you can't see that I will just kind of remind you what they are, because you'll notice things light up here. The Serbo GX and the shunt are actually running some small wires that are fused up to sort of the inside of the Lynx distributor, just on the end lugs that you would normally use to like add more in series. So when I turn the switch on, you will see the Serbo light up, hopefully, and the Victron shunt. So let's find out if I'm lying or if that actually happens. No smoke, that's a good sign. No fire, even better sign. Okay. And now we have the Serbo GX blinking, and you probably can't see it, but there's a blue light blinking on the Victron shunt as well. Okay, and this gauge says we are now drawing 1.5 amps. So let me go see if there's anything on out here real quick. Okay, so I don't see anything out of the ordinary out there, which is good. I guess before we do anything else, let's go ahead and pull up the Victron app for the Serbo GX and the shunt and make sure everything is set up there correctly. The Serbo GX I've kind of toyed around with in the basement before, so that shouldn't have any surprises, but the shunt I haven't used at all yet, so that may need set up. So let's take a look at that real quick. Alright, so everything seems to be checking out so far on the Victron front. Now, I didn't dive too deep into that yet. That's going to take a lot more work, but I want to kind of jump in and see if there's any of the other basic stuff that's working. Namely, cabin lights, things like that. There's not a ton of stuff I can do right now, but let's just check. Okay. Well, I'm already seeing that there's lights on the breaker panel, which is kind of cool. Let's see what happens. Fridge, obviously not going to work. DC outlets, I can check that later. Not a lot of options. Freshwater pump. It works. Okay, let's check some lights. Okay, so that's officially on. Let's try this other one. That one is also on. And I'm going to try some of these cabin lights here. I'm just going to go ahead and turn on both light breakers because it seems like they're divided up over two different ones. Okay, so let's try it again. Ceiling. Oh. Sweet. That's pretty cool. So lights work. And freshwater pump, I mean, it powers up, so that should work. Electric toilet, don't know yet. Got to rebuild that. Entertainment, gonna be honest with you, don't know what that is. Guessing that's radio. It's on. That just turned on. That's cool. All right, well, we will mess with the DC outlets and entertainment switch later, trying to figure out what that stuff does. Let's go check the switches at the Helm, see what happens out there. All right, we are at the Helm, and you're gonna have to bear with me because some of these switches are like so faded that you can barely read them anymore. However, I did find if you kind of hold a flashlight on your phone at like a correct angle that you can kind of still read them, which is good. Now, fortunately, these are just standard Carling rocker switches. The replacement covers for them are, one, easy to replace, and two, nice and cheap. So these will be definitely on the list of things to replace. Let's walk through the ones here that at least make sense. Let's start with blower. That seems important. That's not a good sign. All right, we'll come back to that one. Hold that thought. Okay, I'm dumb. The blower shouldn't work. That is actually still tied to the starter battery, not the house battery, so that would explain why that's not doing anything. Okay, let's continue on. Making note that some of these are probably on the starter battery. No idea what that says. It says docking lights. They work. That's the engine room lights. and they work. Sweet. I actually have replacements for that, but it's kind of cool that they work. Cockpit lights. Oh, cool. Okay. Wiper, I'm not touching that one because there's no blade on there right now, and if I run it and it actually works, that blade is going to scrape the glass, so ignore that one for now. Horn, could be fun. That works. I think that says bilge pump, but I don't think that's going to do anything because of goofy wiring. Yeah, nah, nothing. This one says panel lights, and it's a temporary rocker switch, which is interesting. You would think panel lights would be maybe this or the fuse panel lights, but that's not doing anything. These are the anchor and navigation lights, which are working. Sweet. Okay. Alright guys, so good news. Since that last clip, I've discovered what the problem with the bilge pump was for one. That was just me, simple mistake, being stupid, probably rushing, not paying attention, but I basically wired the two positive wires backwards. So the plain brown wire, which is normally getting power from the switch if you want to manually run the pumps, I had that running right to the fused 12-volt source, so as soon as I powered on the house battery, that's why the bilge pumps kicked on right away. The other wire, which normally would go to that goes to the float switch, I had wired to the manual switch at the Helm, so when I flipped on the manual switch at the Helm, nothing happened. I've gotten that straightened out now, fixed that wiring, got it all tucked in nice, put away, so that is good to go. In that last couple clips, you also probably noticed something that I didn't show before, which is right behind the camera. So what this is it's basically just a cheap Android tablet. Now, I spent a little bit extra to get like a Samsung brand, but it's like by no means like powerful or like high end. It's basically just a basic Samsung tablet that runs Android. And if you guys aren't aware of this, you can actually run the Victron Venus OS operating system on an Android tablet. I really liked having a much bigger display. I think this is a 10-inch screen versus the normal Victron displays, which I think the biggest one is like 7. So I'm not going to go into too much detail. I mean, you can research how to do this if you want to do it yourself. But basically what we're looking at here is the servo display. So showing my battery charge here, water tanks, all that kind of. Now, a lot of this stuff still needs to be fine-tuned, but it's pretty cool. I don't know if that's showing up well on camera or not, but yeah. So right now, got 97% on the battery. It's currently drawing 19 watts of DC loads. It's basically probably these lights. Yep, you can see it drop down there. Pretty sweet. But let me show you installing this. So let's jump to that real quick. Alright, so before we wrap this video up, there's one last thing I want to do that will be kind of the last straw of the DC system, and that is turning on the inverter for the first time. So if you can see this big red disconnect switch here, this is the main disconnect for the inverter. So in theory, if I turn this on, the inverter should get power. Now I have all my AC breakers turned off at the panel, my shore power inlets are turned off, those breakers are off, the source selector switch for generator or grid, all that kind of stuff is turned off. In theory, this would be outputting AC power, but nothing's hooked up. So let's cross our fingers, turn this on. And I'm not being haphazard here. I've I've run through all the stuff in my head already, so everything should be okay. Here we go. Okay, hopefully you can see this. The green light here says inverter on. So this thing is powered up. I heard it click. So I'm making the assumption that it's good to go. Now, that being said, I still need to go through the entire programming settings with this. So I will do that off camera, mostly because I am probably going to watch another video to show me how to do it. No means an expert here, so I'm not going to show you what I'm doing. I'm going to leave that up to you to determine how to do that on your own. Alright guys, so as I mentioned in the last clip there, I think that is going to wrap it up for this video. I know that's only one item off the list, but that is a huge check mark. It's one big step towards getting this boat finished and ready for the water. So, in the next couple videos, I am going to also take a look at the AC system, make sure everything's working as expected there. And I think, unless I'm missing something, we might throw the engine back in. That's a big one. Anyways, like I said, that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, check your mail, anything, whatever. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.